Julius, can you please do something about the woman staring at me? She's been doing this for 24 hours!
Look, Juiced, I wish I could help you, and honestly, I would as an honorary Belmont myself. Good luck trying to get her to not like you. You can kick puppies, and she'll somehow justify it to even like you more. I'm telling you, she's infatuated with you.
Why? I don't even know her.
Oh, but she knows a lot about you. The things she would do just to even spend a minute with you.
Doesn't she have any other partners that she can, do this to? Besides, I'm married. Oh, believe me, Julius, that hasn't stopped me before. Good heavens, you're persistent.
What can I say? When God is literally right in front of me, I can do nothing but stare.
Julius, come on, there has to be something that we can either say or do that can at least distract her for a minute.
Well, there is one idea.
Greetings, my Cherryful Chariots. It's been a minute, and frankly, I just wanted to say thanks. The ending of 2024 was something I was not expecting, but somehow you guys managed to make me reach a milestone that I have been wanting to reach since the beginning of 2024. And that, of course, was to reach 500 subscribers. So, from the bottom of my vampiric heart, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to reach that goal. So, today's video will be in commemoration of us reaching that goal, and this video has been a video that I've been wanting to make for a long while. However, I eventually came down to the idea that when I would eventually reach 500 subscribers, then I would execute on the idea. And, since we reached that goal, here we are. So, Castlevania. One of the most iconic things about the series is the fact that a lot of the characters are some very iconic people, and for many different reasons. Some are just cartoonishly evil, others are no doubt noble in their cause, and others are just blatant idiots. However, we don't have to worry about those fools walking around among us, because today's video subject is about selecting the best of the best, or the cream of the crop, of characters that have been unleashed upon us by the greater Castlevania story, from its humble beginnings to its sad existence on Apple Arcade. We will be going through the entire series to pick out some of the best characters that represent the series, at least in my opinion. Of course, like most top 10 or 20 anything, most of this list will probably be very subjective. So, if you have your own top 10 or top 20 characters from the series that you would like to share with me, I'd be willing to hear it out. Plus, I have a special surprise bonus at the end of the video, so make sure to watch throughout the entire thing, and I will reveal to you exactly what that is. However, we have a list to get to. Now, without further ado, allow me to present to you the top 20 Castlevania characters that I may or may not have shrines dedicated to. Starting our list off with something unexpected, we have the character of Seward from Grimoire of Souls. For those of you who don't know, Seward plays a similar role that Zed does from Curse of Darkness, i.e., he's actually death. However, the way that Seward is portrayed in Grimoire of Souls would really throw people in for a shocker when the reveal is finally made. In fact, when I personally played Grimoire of Souls some time ago, I did not expect Seward to be death at all. So I have to give the writers credit and say that I was not expecting that. Being the director of an organization primarily to keep record of events in the Castlevania history and grimoires, and being as nice as Seward is, I would have never expected it. But upon probably saying that out loud, yeah, I'm surprised I didn't expect it. But regardless, I think Seward is a very well-written character in a mobile game out of all things. And All the characters in Grimoire of Souls are well written, don't get it wrong, it's just that I believe that Seward is the highlight of that game. As if it were not for him, we wouldn't have one of the best twists, I would say, in Castlevania history. Plus, his design is very good, I can't deny that. But yeah, the main reason why he's starting out our list is mainly due to the fact that I found his twist to be super interesting. For those of you who haven't played Grimoire of Souls yet, I definitely recommend that you do, as surprisingly one of the best highlights of Grimoire of Souls is its story, and Seward definitely plays a lot into it. So, when any of you have the chance, or Apple Arcade subscription, I definitely recommend trying it out. But with that unorthodox pick out of the way, let's move on to the next one. Okay, we're really hitting the bullseye when it comes to unorthodox picks now, aren't we? Yes, at number 19 we have the character of Renin from Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness. To me, I believe that Renin is probably one of the most interesting aspects of Castlevania 64. A demon helping the heroes is not something that you hear very often, so when Renin's character comes around, it comes off as a bit odd. Is he trying to use you for his own purposes? Perhaps, but honestly, we don't know. What we do know is that apparently Hell's dire circumstances required Renin to start a business, and what isn't better than selling your soul to make a few bucks? Speaking of selling your soul, I think Renin's dynamic is actually pretty interesting, because if you buy too many things from Renin, there will be a special boss fight that you can have with him. However, if you're like me and never needed to buy anything because the game gives you too many things in abundance, then frankly, you would have never seen this happen. But for those who did go over the spending limit, first off, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you spend that much to begin with? Secondly, you are about to endure a boss fight that I can only describe as... To be fair, all the bosses in Castlevania 64 are pretty meh to begin with, as they're all fucking easy. Except for the final one for some fucking reason. I still have no idea what the hell that one's on about. Plus, one of the aspects that makes me like Renin so much is his theme. It's very... how do I put it? It's very calm and relaxed, which, knowing that you're dealing with a demon, shouldn't get you this calm. And yet, I still listen to it whilst I try to fall asleep. I'm telling you, sometimes Castlevania 64's OST can cook. It just chooses not to. Unfortunately, don't expect any more N64 things to be showing up beyond this point, as frankly, Renin was the highlight of the game, and considering my opinions on it, yeah, it'd be fair to assume that we won't be seeing anyone like Cornell or Reinhardt anytime soon. Now we're really getting somewhere. Other than his
Why?
bastardization
Why?
in
Why,
Castlevania
oh,
Judgment,
fucking-
I think Eric Lecard is a very interesting fellow, and his story is actually one of the ones that makes me actually tear up inside. So the essential gist as to why I like Eric Lecard so much has more so to do with how he looks and his overall story. The looks aspect of it more so comes from how he looked in Castlevania Bloodlines, while the story aspect really comes from how he was portrayed in Portrait of Ruin. I swear, Eric Lecard's entire life is a tragedy. Losing your girlfriend to Elizabeth Bartley, losing your daughters to a guy named Bronner. Seriously, life does not give you any breaks. I mean, from childhood you were taught to learn how to fence, all the way to being engaged to a girl named Lucy Seward. Oh my god, my Cherryful Chariots, you have just watched me realize something in real time. Death named himself Seward because of Eric Lecard's late fiancée in front of one of his descendants. Oh my god, that is... Oh, that's evil. Granted, they're probably just references to Bram Stoker's Dracula, but in universe, I'm gonna take my explanation as my headcanon, as it'd be very fucked up if Death chose Seward out of all names to use as his undercover alias. Now that's just fucked. Anyway, back to Eric. What makes Eric so interesting is his story, as he originally didn't want to become a vampire hunter in the manner that he would later become. However, after a turn of events and the death of Lucy Seward, his fiancée, it was with great tragedy that he was able to reawaken his purpose and learn that he was meant and destined to wield the Alucard spear and hunt down the forces of the night. Then we cut to Portrait of Ruin, where, in the Sisters mode of the game, we learn what happened to Eric. He got a new outfit. But more importantly, he was there to face off against Bronner after Dracula's castle mysteriously awoken in 1944. However, it seems Eric wasn't successful in his bout against Bronner as he was severely injured. However, as Stella and Loretta tried to intervene, they were soon turned into vampires and Eric was killed. However, before he officially died though, he was able to make sure that his spirit would be tied to the castle, and since his will was strong enough, he was able to endure some of the twists and contortions that Dracula's castle tends to do. So, there he was, waiting for anyone to come to Dracula's castle and potentially not only defeat Bronner, but potentially save his daughters. Now, if that isn't a loving father, I don't know what is. Seriously though, as someone who has lived for hundreds of years, I tend to have forgotten the feeling. How unfortunate. But anyway, Eric Lecard, in my opinion, is one of the staple names of Castlevania, and his name shouldn't be forgotten anytime soon, especially considering his contributions to a large part of the series' story.
Be. That's impossible. She can't be alive.
Oh. May I be of service?
No. Forgive me. My name is Hector. What are you doing in a place like this?
I could ask you the same question, sir.
Now I get to talk about one of many Castlevania's leading ladies that nobody fucking brings up. Yes, at the 17th spot, we have Julia LaForez herself. Although she's not my favorite LaForez, for obvious reasons, she is, of course, a LaForez nonetheless. And frankly, I'm very good with the family. Now, the reason why I like Julia as much as I do is more so because, once again, her design speaks to me on a personal level, and secondly, I really dig her character. She's a very kind, cautious, yet coy character. Although, being a witch, she has kindness in her heart for humanity. If she didn't, she'd probably be like her brother Isaac. But clearly, as we see in the games, she's kind-hearted enough to help people like Hector who have gone through so much in their journey in order to defeat evil. Even the same evil that chooses to eliminate the human populace, the same populace that have treated her as an outcast. Ah, don't you just love it when Castlevania characters are just noble? Another thing I like about Julia's character is her voice actor, as I believe that she did an excellent job portraying the character that we ended up all loving and knowing. But in essence, the reason why I like Julia is down to the fact that she sounds nice, she looks nice, and she behaves nice. Now ain't that just swell? But we should now move on, as there are more characters to delve deeper into. Speaking of leading ladies, why don't we look at the House Belnades and see what's cooking up in there? Yep, at the number 16 spot we have Yoko Belnades from Aria and Dawn of Sorrow. More specifically, if we're talking design, I much prefer Harmony of Despair, but that's besides the point. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I like Yoko Belnades instead of her ancestor Cypher or other Belnades affiliated family members like Kerry Fernandez? Well, for you see, I believe Yoko is the best characterized when it comes to House Belnades, and probably I say that because she's the only one that has such characterization. But that doesn't matter. One of the other things I like about Yoko is the story that she's in. More so the big sister role that she plays with Soma and Mina in both Sorrow games. However, a lot of the reasons why I like Yoko has to do with her dialogue options in Dawn of Sorrow, as most of the time it's friendly banter and sometimes she even outright teases Soma for liking Mina. Another thing that gives bonus points is her caring nature, as she really does care about those she considers friends or allies. Especially Julius, if you know what I mean. Which is odd considering I feel like Julius has more sentimental value in a rock than he does Yoko. Plus, the odd love triangle that she finds herself in between Julius, herself, and Hammer is oddly fascinating. Considering that Hammer really likes Yoko but Yoko doesn't know about it, and Yoko really likes Julius but Julius doesn't know about it, which to me is just fucking comical. It is unfortunate though that, considering where she first appeared in, being an Aria of Sorrow, the art style did change in Dawn of Sorrow, but there are two positives to this. Firstly, the Dawn of Sorrow art style allows for the characters to be more expressive. Meanwhile, it also allowed for a redesign of Yoko to be more, better. No offense to anyone who likes the Aria version of Yoko, but I'm just gonna say this, I did not think her design was that good. And apparently Konami agrees, because we have never seen that design of Yoko ever again. But I think I have spoken enough about Yoko. I think it's best that we get to number 15, cause I know a certain someone is waiting for us there. Now won't you look at that, Julius? You made it into the top 20. Specifically the top 15. Now to congratulate you on this monumentous achievement, do you have anything of note to say to our precious Cherryful audience?
Get the fuck away from me.
Alrighty, the first Belmont to show up in this list, and he certainly will not be the last. Now, let's talk Julius for like a second. Julius Belmont is notable primarily due to his gameplay, his design, and his characteristics. Now, When I say gameplay, I mean that I really like Julius in both of the games he shows up in. Granted, I more so appreciate him in Aria of Sorrow considering how much more movement options he has in that game, but at least in Dawn of Sorrow he's a bit nerfed a bit, more so to show that due to his probable age, and the fact that you are playing with 2 other characters instead of just 1, they probably took out a lot of his signature movesets from Aria of Sorrow and dumbed them down in Dawn of Sorrow just so that he doesn't feel all too overpowered compared to his other 2, party members. Which, you ask me, is fine, but you can't expect me to be happy about the fact that he can no longer frickin' high jump anymore. But, moving on, I believe his design in Dawn going forward is a bit of an upgrade, but also a bit of a downgrade. As I believe in Aria of Sorrow it was a lot more detailed and there was a lot more going on with his design, compared to how he looked in Dawn of Sorrow where it was just a bland leather coat with jeans. But for Julius, and for the time that this game takes place, it makes a lot of sense. I just wish that we had the alternative. But hey, it could be worse, at least the design didn't change all that much. Unlike some others, Mina. I can't really say anything about Julius in Aria of Sorrow considering he's just a walking amnesiac, but for the later portions of Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow he comes across as very stoic and very purposeful, meaning that he is solely driven by his family's legacy and his duty to slay the knight, which I will say he is effective at doing. Now, the only thing we need now is a Demon Castle War game, which basically allows us to see a younger version of Julius. I'm telling you, having Julius in the Sorrow games is like Richter only being in Symphony of the Night and having no Rondo of Blood playable. Like, I'm telling you, it's just weird. So yeah, Konami, if you are listening to this, please just make a Demon Castle War game. We're all begging you at this point. And by all of us, I mean like the 500 skeletons of us that are still left. Okay, this probably isn't gonna make any sense, but allow me to explain. I like Genya Arikado more than I do Alucard. And when I was initially making this list, I put Genya Arikado, yet no Alucard. Does that make sense? No? Good, I figure it wouldn't. So, despite looking at him from a visual perspective, you would think that Alucard meets all of my specifications for things that I want in a Castlevania character. And to some degree, you are correct. However, there is one small little problem that negates Alucard in this, entire thing. And it's the unfortunate fact that he's overrated as ever-living hell. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that I don't see why Alucard is extremely popular, and that doesn't mean I don't necessarily like Alucard. However, when we're looking at Genya Arikado, I find a gold mine of untapped potential that I, myself, am going to take my sweet time enjoying. Besides, in these days, Genya Arikado reminds me of an era that I thought was long lost, yet I think it's making a resurgence. Oh, I can't wait to watch that. Anyway, I guess one of the other reasons why I think I like Genya Arikado more than I do base Alucard is mainly due to the fact that Grimoire Souls exist, and the fact that his characterization in that game really elevates him to a higher level in my opinion. As the story within Grimoire Souls, as I've stated many times in the past, is surprisingly really good for a mobile game. And for anyone who hasn't delved into it, I highly do recommend that you do, as it offers new insights on past events within the Castlevania series, and offers a bunch of explanations that may or may not make sense. But I guess something that I can say that goes over Genya Arikado is the fact that Alucard has one of the best voices in the entire series, at least in the original Symphony of the Night. As if you ask me, Robert Belgrade really does carry that character in a way that I have not seen anyone do for many other characters since. Maybe besides Walter, but oh my god is Alucard's voice iconic. But the point of this is to basically state that if you were to ask me which iteration of Alucard I preferred, the base Alucard that we see in Symphony of the Night or Genya Ricardo from the Sorrow games, I am more likely to answer Genya Ricardo from the Sorrow games than I am ever going to answer Alucard, as there's more media ruining Alucard than there is actually helping him, so really I'm just going to keep my Genya Ricardo to myself. I do think though it was a missed opportunity from the Dawn developers to actually animate sprites for Genya Ricardo instead of just reusing Alucard sprites from Symphony of the Night in Julius mode, but whatever, I'll take what I can get. But since we're at the penultimate end of the timeline, I believe the next character requires us to do a bit of time traveling back to the very beginning.
What just happened? I felt something strange.
Ah, he must really like you. You won't be able to leave now.
Who's there?
Now, don't get so excited. I'm just an old man. I just came to gawk at the man crazy enough to come here.
If any of us recall my Lament of Innocence video, then the number 13 slot should be of no confusion to anybody. That is correct, everyone. Our essential shopkeeper and our Lord and Savior himself, Ronaldo Gandolfi. For those who didn't watch my Lament of Innocence video, I'm basically gonna re-summarize every reason as to why I like Ronaldo so much. And it mainly just comes down to his character depiction throughout the story, as he is one of the most vital things to come out of Lament of Innocence, as if it were not for him and his aiding of Leon, we probably would be in a very different Castlevania timeline. Think about it. Ronaldo is the one that gives Leon the magic gauntlet, he's also the one that gives him the Whip of Alchemy, and he's also the one that gives him the tools necessary in order to save Sarah. Sort of. Look, for those of you who don't know, just understand that there is a living, breathing soul in that whip. And if any of you think it's Richter, you're funny. If anything, the closest character I can relate Ronaldo to is Julia LaForez, as they both serve the same purpose to their narratives, and, believe it or not, they're both shopkeepers. It's just that I think, in my opinion, Ronaldo was done a lot better, and his design is a lot better. Which is really saying something, considering all the human models in Lament of Innocence are 10 times worse than they are in Curse of Darkness. I know, it's shocking. But I guess I played Lament of Innocence so much that I've looked past this small little detail. And speaking of designs, holy cow, is it great! It's probably one of the most notable designs to come out of the characters that are labeled as shopkeepers. Maybe besides Julia and Renan, he is by far one of the most notable looking, and he really does stand out from the crowd. And that voice of his, mwah, French kiss. It's really characters like Ronaldo Gandolfi that really help my inner belief that Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness have one of the best voice casts in all the Castlevania games. Then again, that's not really saying much when your only competition is Symphony of the Night and Castlevania Judgment. So, and before anyone says anything, I understand that some of the other Metroidvania games have voice acting as well. It's just that it comes very few and far between. But enough of my praises of Ronaldo Gandolfi though. Let's move on to the next character, and something tells me he's quite well versed in time travel.
I've been waiting for you, Hector. Devil Forge Master.
How do you know me? Who are you?
Saint Germain. I won't bandy words with you. I have an urgent request. Please, refrain from pursuing Isaac any further.
At the number 12 spot, we have the illustrious yet mysterious Saint Germain. Despite his utter bastardization in the Castlevania anime series, the games really do depict a man who is full of mystery and intrigue, and yet somehow still manages to pull off the role of being the comic relief of the game. Now granted, the type of comic relief that he plays isn't your stereotypical he says one-liners and everyone laughs. No, it's more so like your philosophical speech that basically alludes to things while also being, you know, little coy and cheeky. And I'm telling you, his mannerisms and that voice of his really do sell that. Despite his boss fight in Curse of Darkness not being all that great in my opinion, it is unique, I will give it this, as it is one of the few boss fights to utilize time travel in order to, you know, spice up the playing field. Then again, from memory, the only character that is known to do this is Zephyr from Dawn of Sorrow. But it's not in the same way that Saint Germain manipulates time. It's more so he stops time and chooses to throw knives at you during that stop time. Gee guys, I wonder who this reminds us of. I think one of the prevailing interests about Saint Germain is that he's one of the most mysterious that there is, as considering that he is a time traveler, we really don't know much about him other than the fact that he has a goal to play in keeping the Castlevania timeline in check, and he works for the same organization as characters like Aeon. Whether he only has kept in contact with Hector is remaining to be seen, as we really never seen him again after this. Then again, who knows, we could have seen him in other places, just with different aliases and looks. If my Harmony of Dissonance merchant theory goes anywhere, then the last time we saw him was in 1748, but yet he still holds the title as one of the most alluring yet elusive Castlevania characters, as he's probably one of the few characters that we have little to no answers to. Plus, it is kind of strange how you would expect these characters to show up in a bunch of different events, but you know, they never do. It's always isolated incidents. Like, it kind of feels like you have to get lucky to get them, like a shiny Pokemon. But in essence, the reasons why I like Saint Germain is his design, his voice, his character, and his mannerisms. As I'll just say it right now, Saint Germain is one of the most enjoyable things to come out of Curse of Darkness, and that's probably because of all the shenanigans he gets himself into. I swear to god, this man is a riot. Now, if only there wasn't a product that existed in this world that essentially butchered this character like a fucking pig. But before I move on to the next character, there's one final thing that I feel like I should have mentioned. And it's the fact that Saint Germain in the Castlevania series is actually based on a real person. And that person is the Count of Saint Germain, who has in history claimed to be hundreds of years old and to be from Transylvania and be from a certain lineage. Of course, he's also used a bunch of different aliases before this and after, and I think what really connects these two characters is the mystery that resides between both of them. As to this day, nobody really knows who this guy is and where he came from. He just came into the world one day, and then eventually died. It's strange, I assure you. Another interesting thing to note is that there was a union between Romania and the Bukovina territory in 1919, and the treaty that basically signed that into practice, or law rather, was the Treaty of Saint Germain. And if any of us recall the events of Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bukovina is one of the more pivotal areas to come from the novel. Now, isn't this history of the character interesting? Not only is a character who is shrouded in mystery based on an actual person with mystery, but by the end of it, it offers leagues of intrigue. But now that I've dumped all of my fun fact trivia upon you, let's move on to the next character. Usually when it gets to the top 10, that's when things really get spicy, but no, things get spicy from number 11 beyond this point. Maxime Kishnay dominates the number 11 spot on this list. And holy hell is he precious! Now granted, there is a lot to fault Maxim for. The possible kidnapping of Lady Erlanger and taking her to a castle that is, you know, probably Dracula's castle. And wrapping up Juiced into a giant affair where not only does he have to deal with Maxim and his shenanigans, but also an evil Maxim that is trying to possess the real Maxim and to turning into Count Dracula, while also having to deal with death simultaneously. So really, Maxim is practically responsible for the entirety of Harmony of Dissonance happening. But if you didn't hear his reasoning, then it'd be easy to blame him for such. As the only reason why he did what he did was because not only did he feel a little salty about not being hailed as the prime vampire hunter in the Belmont village, but he also wanted to unburden Juiced Belmont from his legacy of having to continuously hunt the night and continuously kill Dracula, as many of his family before him have done. However, with that noble wish came a very steep cost, and it was the fact that Maxim literally almost died and almost lost his psyche. And on top of that, he almost got everyone killed. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily blame anybody for particularly thinking that Maxim is the spawn of Satan, because he is downright incompetent. But I say nay, he is not incompetent. He just lacked foresight. Because for you see in the game, in order to essentially try to remove the curse that the Belmonts have been given in order to hunt the night, Maxim thought it was a great idea to, you know, do what Simon did and gather up all of Dracula's remains and try to revive him and then ultimately kill him. Which... interesting thought process, but in practice, that did not go as planned. And upon really thinking about it, knowing what's going to happen in that castle, it kind of astounds me that Maxim was able to return to Juiced at all, considering that by the end of it, he had amnesia. So, I guess selective parts of the memory were held back, I guess, which is supported by the fact that he slowly regains his memory throughout the game, and he still recalls how to use weapons, he recalls names like Lydie, and he remembers specifically that the castle that they go to is exactly where Lydie is. Oh, and do remember that during his 2-year expedition, he started the expedition when he was 16. Yeah, I figure I mentioned that. But holy high heavens, when we see him at last again, he is the incarnate of beauty. And before anyone says anything, believe me, I'm a vampire who double checks. I know how old everyone is. The last thing I need to contribute myself to is making myself a part of a cancel culture list. But, jokes aside, I really like Maxim's design. Which is saying a lot considering that the primary colors that he has on his person are not the kind of colors that I'd be mostly into, but somehow Ayami Kojima managed to make it work, and it's beautiful. I would also talk about Maxim's theme, which is prevalent in the game he comes from, but in the words of one of my most courteous of friends, the OST sounds like it came out of the Atari 2600. So I'm just going to say that if this game gets an eventual remake in, I don't know, 500 years, we may talk about it then. But for now, just understand that there is a seed that is willing to sprout into something beautiful. It's just that it hasn't sprouted yet. I guess the last thing to note is that his gameplay in Harmony of Dissonance is by far one of the most enjoyable to come out of the GBA trilogy, considering that he is super agile, super quick, and get this, he's probably one of the only few characters who is actually capable of doing a front flip. I know that sounds like heavily minor in the grand scheme of things, but oh my god, the cool factor is just there. Plus, if you ask me, I'll be placing my bets on him for the 100-yard dash. But enough of my jesting. Now that we've gotten to the 11th spot, we can finally move on to top 10 territory. And I know damn well that there's gonna be some surprises, and there's gonna be some shocks. So, let's get into it.
Wait! That crest!
Are you the Devil Forge Master?
That whip. Could he be?
Answer me! Are you the Devil Forge Master? I am. Then this is the hour of your death.
At the number 10 spot, we have Trevor C. Belmont from Curse of Darkness. And I mean this when I say it, the only Trevor C. Belmont that is actually worthy of being on this list is not the anime one, the one that is depicted in Grimoire of Souls and in Curse of Darkness. To me, and in my professional vampiric opinion, Trevor C. Belmont from Curse of Darkness is the best depiction of Trevor Belmont that this series has ever fucking seen. And allow me to highlight my reasons as to why. Starting off with something that I believe everyone can grasp, his design. His Curse of Darkness design is by far one of the most iconic things about him. The iconic scar, the iconic leather coats, the axes and the belts all over him. Oh my god, he screams Vampire Hunter. And I'd be honestly be doing a disservice if I didn't mention that long iconic brown hair. Plus those boots and gloves, oh my god, they can snap me in half. But before I lose sight of myself, allow me to mention his character. One of the things that allures me to Trevor C. Belmont's character in Castle Darkness specifically is how he remains very focused and how he's very confident in his goal, but probably due to Dracula's curse he comes off as a bit of a more aggressive figure. He's a very no-nonsense character, and he doesn't let anything fly by him so easily. Minus the one time Isaac tricked him and almost got him killed, but that is besides the point. He was outmatched by someone with a more higher hubris. Plus, one of the main things that I think this Trevor really highlights in is his stubbornness. As any Belmont, they are known to be stubborn, but if you were to ask me which Belmont out of all of them is the most stubborn out of them all, I would tell you Trevor C. Belmont is. And this game is the epitome of that, considering that he has fought Hector nearly twice and has tried to nearly kill him on both occasions. Of course, the second occasion was to merely test his skills so that he would enter the Infinite Corridor and not have a guilty conscience. But holy hell, mercy is not a thing in this guy's book. We've seen how he's treated humans who have had affiliations with vampires. Now imagine how he would treat actual vampires. God, if we had a Dracula's Curse game that was in the exact style and was written in the same way as Curse of Darkness, we could have potentially had a fight go on between Alucard and Trevor, and that dialogue would have been juicy as all hell. I'm telling you guys, there are so many missed opportunities that Konami can reap and sow on, but they never do. Another thing, we all know that Trevor's theme is beginning. However, since Curse of Darkness hardly ever uses, official tracks from other games, his theme in Curse of Darkness is Legendary Belmont. And when I tell you, this theme blows beginning out of the water, I mean it. It comes across so ethereal and action-packed, like it feels like you are about to fight one of the most powerful beings known to man. Which may or may not be true, perhaps I'll cover that one day. But yeah, there is a lot to look for in Curse of Darkness' Trevor. His design, his voice, his attitude, his theme, and even down to his gameplay. Which, I'll give it this, Curse of Darkness' movement is a little slow, but that's mostly because the map is fucking ginormous. And considering that the game before it, Lament of Innocence, probably has the same running speed, it probably comes down to that one small little thing where they probably just ported over the running speed and thought it'd be a-okay. Which, no guys, it really wasn't. But besides that, Trevor's gameplay in Curse of Darkness is as you'd expect for a Belmont. However, now it's in 3D. The only difference though is that he doesn't learn combos the same way that Leon does, and if you ask me, I think Leon had a better gameplay style, but Trevor does come a close second. And I'll give you this, it's better than how any whip user played in other 3D games like Judgment or the 64 games. Plus, one final thing, almost all the lines that Trevor delivers in Curse of Darkness always gives me chills. Either because I'm a vampire and I feel like he is going to blow me to smithereens, or it's just that his aura is just that fucking huge. In fact, allow me to showcase some of these scenes that highlight what I am talking about.
I recall there was another Devil Forge master. They say he betrayed Dracula and forswore his powers, but that was 3 years ago during the war. Could he have survived? It cannot be. Hector. I shall remember that name. Be that as it may, I am the one who shall vanquish him. Your meddling is unwelcome. Leave him to me. It cannot be avoided. You must show me just how much power you've gained.
Wait! I have no reason to fight you!
This is your reason. Defend yourself! The place to which Isaac has gone can only be entered by those who possess very advanced powers. I had to test you.
I see. Meaning you would have me pursue him.
Indeed. But first you shall need my help. Come. Hector, hunt him down. And when you have him, show him no mercy.
See what I mean? But we've had our fun at number 10. Enough talk! Let's move on to number 9.
See. Give him this message. You have become a cursed being, and I will never forgive you. This whip and my kinsmen will destroy you someday. From this day on, the Belmont clan will hunt the night!
You guys thought it was Dracula, didn't you? Oh, don't worry. We'll get to Dracula eventually. But for now, let's talk about the first ever Belmont. Leon Belmont. What isn't there to like about him? He's honorable, he's noble, he comes from a very illustrious background. He's kind, yet a bit gullible at times. But as some people said, don't mistake kindness for weakness, as when it comes down to it, Leon can really pack a punch. Another reason why I really like Leon is more so because the game he comes from, being Lament of Innocence, has one of the most enticing and alluring stories that the series probably has. Which is strange, considering that if you ask me what my top 3 Castlevania games are, I can assure you that Lament of Innocence is not number 1. However, if you restructured that sentence to mean which Castlevania story is your favorite, then chances are you'd either get Lament of Innocence at number 1 or number 2. But let me push myself back on the main subject. Leon. Leon's design is probably one of my favorites, considering that I'm always the type of person to like a character who has a lot going on. I know I just said that I preferred Genya Ricardo over Alucard, but that's the exception to the rule. I just think it's a massive shame that the model that he has for Lament of Innocence does his design such a disservice, as it's really hard to look past the face models in Lament of Innocence. But if we were to remove that, and simply look at his character model from the waist down, you could see that there was a lot of attention and effort into crafting this beautiful design. It kinda just makes me wish that in the future we would get new 3D models of these characters, like Grimoire of Soulsify them, in a sense. Since the only 3D Castlevania game we can really look to at this current moment is Grimoire of Souls, I think it's best to try and think of what can be done beyond those limits, or just keep it to those confines. Regardless, I think I made my point pretty astutely clear. I like Leon because he is so adorable, and the fact that he has one of the best designs a Belmont could probably have. However, of course, since this list is hardly even over, who knows what other Belmonts can be showing up afterwards. Leon's story is probably one of the most compelling Belmont stories that we've got, and his voice actor did a compelling job at selling Leon's performance. So really, when you put all these things together, it's kind of a no-brainer as to why I like Leon. Plus, his gallery of antagonists is probably one of my favorite antagonists in the series. Speaking of such antagonists...
Ebony stone. What's that?
If you want to know.
This might come as a shock to a lot of you, but I really like Yahi Monster. To me, he's one of the most compelling vampire villains that we have in the entire series, which is saying something considering we have a ton of them. Despite starting my early Castlevania obsession by calling him Joachim, I know, you can make fun of me all you want, I later learned of how to actually pronounce his name, and everything just settled in afterwards. So why do I like Yahim so much? Well, for starters, it's the same reason as to why a lot of these characters are in the places that they're in right now, and it's mainly due to their design, their story, and the fact that whoever voiced them did such an excellent job that I myself cannot even replicate. I mean, seriously, have you seen any of my skits? But let's go over one by one. Yahim's design is very intricate, and depending on what piece of artwork you're looking at, depends on the fact of whether or not his design is more, I guess, Gothic, in the sense that usually when we are referring to Gothic architecture, it is usually highly detailed. So, when I refer to Yahim's design as Gothic, I'm mainly referring to the fact that it is highly detailed. So, let's just make that one very clear. The platinum silvery hair that he has is just... oh my god, it is a weakness of mine. And you're gonna see very quickly that a lot of characters after this are going to have that same quality. But another thing is that he has this indigo-ish or like purplish cloth underneath his armor that is just so complemented by the fact that he's wearing silver and black armor. It's just... oh, it's beautiful. And his boots, oh my god. Lord, I can gush over this design all day. But we have other things to gush about, such as his story. The main story behind Yahim's character is that he used to be one of Walter's generals, similar to how Medusa, Succubus, and I'm sure other monsters in Walter's castle seem to have that rank. However, there was a day when Yahim believed that he could overtake Walter's throne and take it for himself. However, he soon found out that Walter was a very strong vampire, and this was probably due to the Ebony Stone that he possessed. And since the Ebony Stone chose Walter as its rightful master, Yahim was promptly defeated by the overwhelming force. But instead of killing him outright, Walter had a better idea for him. Send him to underground Alcatraz! And ever since, he has been mumbling and walking into walls and just, doing prisoner things. It was all until Leon discovered him one day that he was allowed to vent his anger and frustration over losing to Walter. And he also saw an escape within Leon, as if he were to defeat Leon Belmont, he would probably have the keys to his escape. However, as fate would have it, Leon Belmont defeated him, and we've never seen Yahim Monster ever again. Which is honestly a war crime if you ask me. Plus, if you really want to be, philosophical, the only other character that I can probably resemble Yahim with is Olrox from Symphony of the Night, considering that Olrox has a relationship with Dracula that is similar to how Yahim had a relationship with Walter. Now, isn't that a nice parallel you can tell all your Castlevania buddies? But as I stated, Yahim is one of my favorite Castlevania characters solely due to these reasons, and as you can see, there is merit to be found here. It is unfortunate though that characters like Yahim Monster get forgotten in the bowels of time. Speaking of time though, I think I know just the person who knows a little bit more about that than our friend Saint Germain. Okay, guys, I know this might sound a little funny, but you are going to have to hear me out on this. Yep, at number 7 we have Judgment's poster boy, Aeon. Now, I know what you are all probably thinking. Why the hell would you like a character that only came from a spin-off game and has the personality trait of cardboard? And for you see, I like his personality of cardboard. Look, I get that compared to all the other characters in the Castlevania series, Aeon might come across as bland, but considering that his role is a literal time watcher, and the fact that he dresses in all white, I kind of expect him to sound that way. And there is some charm in it. Like, I'm not gonna say that Aeon should be as popular as Alucard for that very reason, but I am going to state my case that Aeon, despite what many would believe, is more than a monotone pony. So, allow me to state my reasons as to why I like Aeon. Number 1, his design. Although many can state that his design is very bland in the color scheme department, what you can't say, though, is that it is not pretty to look at. Somehow the bland coloration of whites, greys, and blacks, with the design of his suit and his monocle and the type of hair that he has, just fits together into a wonderful amalgam of a character. Plus, for the same reason as to why I like Saint Germain, there is a bunch of mystery regarding Aeon, considering, according to the Law of Judgment, Aeon doesn't have a timeline of his own, or he doesn't come from any specific time, so he just exists, and just goes in and out of timelines, which makes me wonder if Saint Germain is the same way, or that he is unlike Saint Germain in that instance. There is a lot to try and discover about Aeon, but a lot of the stuff never gets answered because, you know, the Time Watchers are the most mysterious thing known to man. Plus, I know another complaint that a lot of people have considering Aeon is that he talks a lot about time. Like, some would say that it is his defining characteristic, and I have to disagree. Although yes, he does talk about time a lot, it is more so because that is his fucking job, and he cares for the sanctity of the timeline. So, if it were not for him or his actions, chances are that Castlevania timeline would be very fucking screwy. All because of a certain Egyptian god getting a little bit bitter. Also, another thing to note is that Aeon's name literally means eternity, which I find to be very adorable. Along with the fact that the name of his theme is Darkness of Fear, despite, you know, being as white as an angel. There is so much lore regarding Aeon and the fact that he somehow simultaneously is able to fit within the timeline. It's just so wonderful and magical. I can really gush about him all day. But to forsake all of your sanities, I think I'm going to return to the Castlevania timeline and leave the time gap, and leave Aeon to his devices. Or, as he would say, my hour is up. Damn, Soma, right at number 6. You were so close to top 5. Oh, that must suck for you, doesn't it? Yep, at the number 6 spot, we have none other than Soma Cruz. And depending on who you are either glad that he made it this far into the list, or you are seething at the mouth that he is not number 1. And honestly, I understand both. Now, I kinda stated a lot of the reasons why I like Soma as a character in this video over here, but to try and summarize everything I said from that video onto here, allow me to do that. So, one of the main reasons as to why I really like Soma as much as I do, is mainly due to his gameplay style from Aria and Dawn of Sorrow. As I specifically believe that Dawn and Aria of Sorrow have some of the most addicting gameplay styles that the Castlevania series has ever seen. So much so that games like Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia, and Ritual of the Night even copied this. What am I referring to exactly? Well, I'm referring to the Souls mechanic, where you can get a variety of different souls from the enemies that you kill throughout the castle. Now, some can say that Technically, Circle of the Moon and Symphony of the Night did this. However, I would argue that they didn't do it in the same manner that Aria and Dawn did, where instead of collecting DS cards or equipment, you are instead getting souls that basically allow you to get mini power-ups or abilities that allow you to do a variety of different things. You want to go as fast as Sonic himself? There's a soul for that. You want to jump higher than the mountains? There's a soul for that. You want to bomb Hiroshima? There's a soul. Oh wait. The point is that I find Soma to be highly customizable, especially in the ability department, which is why I really like him. The other thing has to do with his story and his character design, but I'm sure as far as the character design goes, I'm pretty sure you can understand as to why I like Soma a lot, despite the whole modern aesthetic he's going for. The white puff coat, the white platinum hair, and the pale skin. Yum. Granted, I don't think his designs post-Dawn have been better than Aria, but I still think they follow the core principles as to why Soma is who he is. And it's nice to see that although characters that take place in the future can still obtain that Castlevania drip. But now, his story. Soma's story is a very complex one, as being the reincarnation of Dracula is not something you would readily want to learn, or is it easy to understand. But that is Soma's life, and ever since discovering this, he has been trying to tame the powers of Dracula within his very being. But the entire fucking world wants to make it an issue that Soma has to become the next Dark Lord. And by the world, I mean the cult that you fight in Dawn of Sorrow, and Graham Jones, the guy who tried to become Dracula himself because he was born in the same year Dracula died. Even though Graham Jones didn't specifically want Soma to become the Dark Lord, in fact he was kind of resenting the idea, however his defeat not only helped Soma almost get to that point, but it also allowed for the world to realize that there is an actual chance that Dracula can be revived within Soma, as Celia Fortner was able to do in the dark ending for Dawn of Sorrow. Another major thing is Soma's character, as he comes off as very not wanting to do with anything that is going on around him. However, he is forced to do the things that he is doing because he was dragged into it, and he unfortunately has to watch people that he soon develops feelings for either get stabbed, beaten, or just blown away like a leaf. It's kind of amazing how if any of us were in Soma's circumstance, we'd be struggling with our very existence, and yet by the very end, Soma is still resilient and still manages to pull through everything that has been thrown at him. You know, now that I think about it, it's no wonder why Soma Cruz is considered a role model by some. And honestly, if he is your role model, I don't exactly blame you. He has all the positive characteristics of humanity despite not really showing it much. In fact, out of all the characters he resembles, he kind of resembles Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, considering that they're both put in situations at young ages where they would have to turn into men relatively quick. And although they come off as uncaring at times, they genuinely do care about the people around them, and they rather save people than kill them. So yeah, that is why I like Soma Cruz. And it is definitely not because I really dig his design a lot. But, now that we're done with this, we can finally move in to the top 5.
Now that I reflect upon it, Isaac's madness and Rosalie's death were both caused by the curse. This, then, is the final forge. Heed my words, O great powers of darkness! Release to me one of the tortured souls. Let me infuse him with my life force and awaken him to the world of the living. Immaculate being, appear before me now!
Who better to start our top 5 than Hector from Curse of Darkness himself? God, I hate the fact that I have to be specific as to which Hector I'm talking about. Anyway, despite the animated Hector being an utter disgrace to the very identity he so happens to share, Hector from Curse of Darkness is one of the most enticing protagonists in the entire series, at least in my professional opinion. And if anything, in his story he represents the core principles of it very well. That being, if you allow yourself to be controlled by your anger, you will be no better than those you are exacting your revenge upon. You can thank Julia LaForez for teaching me that. Although considered a gullible man by many, due to the fact that he has fallen for multiple of Isaac's traps and has fallen for the whole death scheme, I mean, to his fairness, I don't think anyone would have predicted that Isaac would have shown up behind Trevor and stabbed him in his literal heart. As far as the whole Zed thing is concerned, he probably should have put 2 and 2 together after he saw Saint Germain and him talking. But oh well, I'm pretty sure a lot was going on in his mind, so God only knows. However, something I think we can all agree that Hector is very much determined. As the shit we constantly see Hector go through just to enact his revenge against Isaac, or at least make vengeance for Rosalie's sake, he relearns a forsaken practice that he did not want to relearn because he wanted to spend his life with Rosalie, just so he can beat the hell out of Isaac for killing Rosalie. Just to find another woman, who is Julia of course, who kinda resembles Rosalie in the sense that they're both blonde and they both have caring natures. Only difference is that one of them is an actual witch, meanwhile the other was convicted of being one. Thank you, Isaac, I'll get to you in a minute. Also, you can either tie this to Hector or not, but the game that he comes from has one of the best soundtracks that this fucking series has ever seen. So yeah, if you want to add points to him for that, you can, I'm just gonna mention that here. Plus, another thing I'd like to point out is that Hector's design follows the Gothic principle perfectly, meaning that he is very much detailed. He is another character that has a lot going on with him, and like I said prior, I like characters who have a lot going on. Plus, he also has the platinum white hair, so once again he fits into that special category. You know what, for all the Cherryful Chariots watching, either flip a coin or take a drink of something for every character who shows up in this list who so happens to have platinum white hair. I'm sure there's not that many in this list, but I'm going to presume that you're not going to be feeling good after this. Also, one small thing to get out of my system. Fuck all of my friends who constantly refer to animated Hector every time he gets brought up. God, I've been wanting to say that for a while. I think it's pretty much clear as to where my disdain from the animated Hector comes from, but we're talking about the video game Hector, so let's try to not bring him up again. As far as gameplay is concerned, Hector has also another good gameplay style that is unfortunately never brought back, and that is the whole Devil Forge mastery system, where you have a companion accompanying you throughout the entire game, and depending on what innocent devil it is, via the fairy, the battle type devil, the flying type devil, or just the devil, you can do a myriad of different things and do a myriad of different attacks depending on what devil you have. Plus, the innocent devil can develop into different branches depending on what weapon you're using. So, for example, certain branches can only be unlocked by using axes, swords, or rapiers, while the other classes can only be unlocked by staves and other special items. That, to me, is very interesting, because it allows for the player to use weapons that they otherwise wouldn't be using, because they have to use those weapons in order to unlock new innocent devil types. Which, from the developer's standpoint, is a very smart thing to do, and something that I can really appreciate. Also, I'll say this, Hector's voice actor does a really good job in the game, as he really does sell a character that is conflicted with what he wants to do, whether he wants to kill Isaac or abide by Julia's wishes to not kill him, and not let the curse take hold of him. He's a very troubled man, and the voice actor definitely portrays that in the game. So as far as voice direction is concerned, I love it. However, with everything positive I have to say about Hector wrapped up, allow us to move on to number 4.
I've sharpened mine. I've been waiting quite a long time to plot my revenge. Not only did my lord die because of you, you stripped me of my pride, my home. Now I shall make you suffer as I suffered. You shall die a most painful, gruesome death!
You thought we were done with Curse of Darkness? No, we're about to talk about Isaac. Isaac Le fucking Forez. is my favorite thing to come out of Curse of Darkness. And dear God, there are so many reasons as to why. One of the main reasons is his overall presence in the game. Not only is he the central antagonist for the entire thing, but oh my god, his demeanor and attitude is some of the best to come out of the Castlevania series. He's witty, he's sarcastic, he's evil, he's maniacal, and he is downright diabolical. Ugh, if only he wasn't obsessed with Dracula. Another thing is his design. Oh my goodness. It is one of the most unique designs in the entire series, considering you really don't see many people without wearing a shirt. However, like many things, Isaac is the exception. His iconic red hair, his just dastardly attitude, and his down bad appearance. Oh my goodness, there is nothing wrong with it. But I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In the Curse of Darkness manga, he was clothed, at least for some degree, as we would have seen that he looked like a combination between the outfits that Isaac from the anime wore and what Hector currently wears in the game. However, due to his batshit nature, he sort of degraded that outfit into what we see him wearing today. And honestly, I prefer it. We also got a missed opportunity to see Isaac in a cloak, but you know what, the manga already provided it to me, so I think I'm good. Plus, if I can recall, him and Eric Lacard are the only predominant spear users in the entire series, which is really strange considering you thought there'd be more. But oh well, I'm content with those two being the only ones. Especially Isaac's spearmanship. Also, Isaac has a literal lightsaber, which is my favorite fucking color. Pink. What? Come on guys, are you surprised that my favorite color's pink or something? I mean, hello, look at me! Anyway, another thing that makes me really tied to Isaac's character is his voice actor. Cause oh my god, once again, we have another instance where in my opinion, the voice actor just does such an excellent job on the character that I had to take a few steps back to really appreciate it. There is such range in his voice where you can just feel the intensity every time he speaks. You can feel like the maniacal playfulness that Isaac has within his voice. It is just magical and marvelous as to how well it is portrayed. If you ask me, there is no other villain that is set for Hector other than Isaac. Isaac is the perfect embodiment of everything that Hector isn't. It's like I've probably said on my Curse of Darkness review. Isaac is the yin to Hector's yang, which just makes their duality just so much more better for it. Which is kind of why they're both together here on the list, because you can't really have one without the other, because they complement each other so well. But alas, I like Isaac more. It's kind of a shame though that you can't really play as him in Curse of Darkness, instead you get Trevor mode, which, oh my god, Konami, please, if you're ever going to remake or re-release this game, can we please have an Isaac mode? I beg of you! But yeah, the core reasons as to why I really like Isaac so much has to do with his overall demeanor and presence, his appearance, his theme. Oh my god, I haven't even mentioned the theme! So, Isaac's theme in Curse of Darkness is Young Nobleman of Madness. And I remember distinctly when I showed one of my friends this theme in specific, he was awed by the guitar riff that was present within the song. Granted, not the thing I was hoping he'd catch on to, but it was something that he ended up liking because of it. So, regardless, I think I'm glad that the guitar riff is there. But his song encapsulates the madness and the intensity that Isaac's character portrays, and it does such a service to him as a character. So yeah, can't believe I almost forgot to mention that. But now we're going to reach the top 3, and make your bets, folks, because I assure you, you're all gonna be surprised by the 3 that are to follow.
Revenge against God.
We have risked our lives and fought for the sake of God. But God mercilessly stole away the one I loved most. When all I ever wished for was Elizabetha's safety. If limited life is God's decree, then I shall defy it, and within that eternity, I shall curse him forevermore.
What? I told you I'd get to Dracula eventually. And this is what I get for being a smartass. God dang it. So at number 3 we have Matthias Kronkfist, who to this day is responsible for my most watched video on my channel, so I must thank him for that. What is there to say about Matthias that I haven't said already? That his design is immaculate, his story is of great tragedy yet of triumphant evil. What isn't there that I haven't said already? I guess the only thing out of memory that I haven't mentioned is how much of a reference he is to Matthias Corvinus, who was once the leader of Hungary and created the Black Army. On an additional note, his wife Elisabetha was a reference to Elizabeth of Celje, the real-life wife of Matthias Corvinus. I guess another thing to add is that in Grimoire of Souls, there is a dialogue text that shows when Alucard is discussing his father Matthias. He states in that game that Matthias was able to return for some time upon meeting Lisa, but Dracula soon came back when Lisa was killed. It's very interesting how Castlevania wants to tackle the identity of Matthias, as they always depict Matthias and Dracula as two separate entities, where even though Dracula is the corruption of Matthias' spirit, Matthias still exists in some degree. Whereas every time Dracula regains his humanity, he returns back to the human Matthias that he once was. The one that loved Elisabetha, the one who had Leon as his most trusted confidant, the one that was meticulous and planning and clever and tactitious. However, each time something tragic happens to him, he just reverts back to that same Dracula that would go on to ravage Europe for centuries to come. It's kind of tragic, really, which is why I love Matthias more than any incarnation of Dracula, because at its core, Matthias is a tortured man who simply just wants what he was robbed of, and that was the love of his life, Elisabetha. But since he was unable to come to terms with that reality, so he blamed the only thing that he thought was rational, and that was God. Even if God did or didn't take Elisabetha away from him, it didn't change the fact that afterwards Matthias became a broken shell of what he once was. And that to me is the biggest tragedy in the entire Castlevania series, where all of this sparkled because of one man's heartbreak, and his inability to handle it properly. He then in turn became destructive and cut off everyone he knew, everyone who was willing to call him a friend. He abandoned all of it, just so he can live a life of solitude and immense darkness, and change the very fiber of his being. Like I said, his story is a tragedy and it's a very sad one, and it's kind of why I like Matthias so much. It's because of that tragedy that makes him human. Sure, he can protest all he wants about being a vampire and how he lost his humanity because of God, but at the end of the day, the main reason why he does what he does is purely a human one, and that is grief. This is something that, I'll give the anime its credit, actually was able to portray very well within Dracula's character in that show. Where instead of seeing a stereotypical Dracula where he just wants evil for the sake of being evil, instead we just see a broken man. A guy who just wanted to live in peace with his wife and his child, but was unable to due to human hubris. As Alucard said in that anime, his attack against all of humanity was one giant suicide note. He didn't want to live in a reality without his beloved, and if it meant that he had to destroy all of humanity for retribution, then he might as well do so, considering that God's many gifts upon reality was humanity, which was why Matthias, or Dracula, sought it necessary for humanity to be gone from this world. Because to Matthias, no human soul can measure to the worth and meaning that Elisabetha's soul had to him. It's also because Matthias is very hard. I think you all can understand why I like Matthias now, as although he's not Dracula, or by any stereotypical means a Dracula, he is what allows for the Dracula for everyone that knows and loves him to exist, and he provides the core foundations as to what Dracula would later become throughout the entire series. But, speaking of Dracula and core fundamentals, the next character we have to talk about gave rise to the very Dracula that we see today, albeit unintentionally. At the number 2 spot we have Walter Bernhard. And despite having the name that makes everyone giggle every time it's said, Walter is one of the most intimidating, yet also villainous characters within the Castlevania series. Any negative stereotype to a vampire that you can probably think of probably originated from him. Like with Matthias, I had already made a 30-minute video as to why I liked Walter as much as I did, but to go over everything again, one of the main things that I really like about Walter is not only is his presence, but also his mannerisms and his characteristics, as sometimes he can be portrayed as almost cartoonishly evil at times, as you really get to see the accentuated villainy that comes from his speech, and how much he does not care for human life, and views it as something as so little as entertainment. We can see it in his connections to characters like Ronaldo Gandolfi, where he will do the most heinous of things to somebody, and the cruelest of things, just because he's bored. There's no motivation to it, unless a motivation is developed by something the other person or other party did. Hell, the only thing that I can simply state out of anything that he did that was purely motivated by, I guess, revenge, was Yahim's imprisonment. But even then, he turned it into a game for himself, where he trapped Yahim in the Dark Palace of Waterfalls, expecting him to never escape, and if he did, well, he'll be waiting for a challenge that he will most certainly win. It wasn't until Leon's arrival that we really saw Walter unravel, where his cocky personality, his playful and eagerness to watch a game, as sadistic as it is, be played out. And when Leon finally breaks through his guard, he immediately starts to panic and begins to sweat, because no one has ever reached that far, and he never planned for something to go this wrong for him. Another thing he never expected was for his own second-in-command, Death himself, to betray him for a man who had already claimed the stone that he has been working his entire vampiric life to obtain. Like with many characters that I've mentioned in this list, it is such a shame that we never see Walter again outside of, stuff like Judgment or Grimoire of Souls. The only time we ever get to see him again is in, crossovers, like Vampire Survivors Ode to Castlevania, or, some references or nods to him. But other than that, we really never see the guy again, which is a real shame, because I think he can really give Dracula a run for his money. Considering that we know at what time his whole story takes place and the abilities that he's able to do, and then we look at what Dracula is able to do throughout the entire series, it makes you wonder if a majority of Dracula's power came from Walter's, which is definitely possible. From what I can recall, there isn't anything out there that can flat out state that a majority of Dracula's power comes from Walter's soul or the Amity Stone. All we do know, though, is that when Walter's soul was absorbed by Death and put into the Crimson Stone, supposedly, it did have a significant impact. One of the other things I like about Walter is mainly his Castlevania variant, and what I mean by that is the entire castle that you roam around in Lament of Innocence is by far one of my favorite castles to explore in the series, and I have to give props to the Castlevania team at the time for being able to construct such a ethereal yet dark place that is grounded in some form of reality, but there are aspects of it that just keep you away from it. Like, for example, you would think that you're roaming a regular chapel in the House of Sacred Remains. However, the more you go down into the house, the more you start to realize things are warped and things don't line up as much as they should. It's like Walter's castle is making a mockery or trying to make a duplication of what it saw or what it's envisioning, but can't get it quite right. I guess the best concept I can explain for this is how skinwalkers work, where they'll take an identity of someone, but you know it's not them because of things like speech, mannerisms, the way they move, stuff like that. Which, by the way, now that I'm saying that out loud, a skinwalker in Castlevania would be very interesting. But I'm getting off topic. Another reason why I like Walter so much is purely his design, as I think it's one of the most detailed designs of a vampire that I've ever seen in the series, and hardly any other character can probably compare to it. The amount of detail that Ayami Kojima was able to put into such a character, it's probably, in my opinion, one of the few characters that actually was able to retain all the detail that they had in their artwork, and we see it in the game. Granted, you can make this case for practically anybody, but in my personal opinion, Walter's one of those characters that retains most of his artistic detail. And, like with Matthias Kronqvist, I find him very suitable. I can't say the H word because if I do, I have a feeling something is going to hit me in the back of the head. I have learned my lesson, I will do no such thing, even if resisting the temptation is killing me. But if you haven't watched my Walter video, I highly recommend that you do, as it's one of those videos that I wish did a little better in the algorithm, but oh well. As long as you guys are entertained, that's my main focus. But with everything that I have discussed about Walter being wrapped up, allow us to get to the final character of this list. My number one favorite Castlevania character of all time. And I assure you, to some, you might expect this, to others, you're going to be in for a shock. Alright, roll in, number one. I have no shame whatsoever. That is correct, everyone. My favorite Castlevania character of all time comes from my favorite Castlevania game of all time. Who would have seen this one coming? But yes, my favorite character in all of Castlevania, and you can either take this or leave it, is Juste Belmont from Harmony of Dissonance. And saying that I worship this character as if they were a god is an understatement. To me, Juste epitomizes the best thing that Castlevania has ever offered me. And that was the combination of stereotypical Belmont elements with other aspects of Castlevania characters throughout the series. Now, a lot of people compare Juste to Alucard in the sense that they both look identical and act similarly, which I have to disagree. Just because Harmony of Dissonance try to go for a Symphony of the Night approach does not necessarily make it a bad thing. In fact, most of the games following Symphony of the Night tried to do the Symphony of the Night thing, and singling out Harmony of Dissonance for this is probably just immoral. However, what I will say though is that when it comes to the castle itself, yeah, I can't defend that. However, as far as the plot synopsis goes, I can. So, as far as Juste is concerned, and maybe I'll make my own dedicated video to him eventually, but as far as Juste is concerned, I believe that he is one of the most interesting characters to come out of this series, mainly due to the fact that his connections with characters like Maxim, Lydie, and yes, even the Merchant, and Death himself, is one of the most fascinating story events that I have ever witnessed. And it is such a shame that his story is boggled down by the fact that it is on the GBA and his game is notorious for having one of the worst soundtracks known to man, which I also disagree with. Harmony of Dissonance's OST is one of those OSTs that requires a bit of time to get used to. How would I know this? Well, because I used to not like the OST either. However, upon repeated playthroughs of Harmony of Dissonance, because it is my pride and joy, I would listen to these songs over and over again, and I would soon hear the small little things that each of the songs offered, and I would sooner or later fall in love with them. Funny enough though, I'm not really a fan of Juice's theme all that much, more so because it is the most overplayed aspect about him, and every time someone mentions Juice's name, they always bring up Successor of Fate, which I get it, it's his theme and all, but holy crap, does it have to be the most remixed song from the fucking game? Then again, me complaining about this is like me complaining that people only remix Divine Bloodlines because it's Richter's theme, so really, who am I to judge on this? But allow me to return to Juiced as a character for a moment. One of the aspects I like about Juiced is that, although he is kind and noble at heart, he isn't not willing to lie to those he cares about in order to protect them from the truth. Which some may say that is a contradiction within itself, but frankly, I don't see it that way. For me personally, I see it as Juice trying to protect those he cares about from understanding the horrible fates that they have just endured, and he wants them to have a peaceful mind and don't want to think about it. Which to me is a fair thing enough. Considering that the horrors we see on Juice's journey, it's understandable that he wouldn't want to mention this to anyone he cares about. Especially Lydie, considering we learn at the end of the game upon saving her Maxime, that Maxime fucking bit her! In the plot, we really see how much he cares for those he considers friends, and the depths he is willing to go to just to rescue both of them. Whether it's defeating Death, defeating evil Maxime, and defeating Dracula's Wraith, or just collecting furniture, which is another thing I like about him by the way, all of this adds up to the things that Maxime is willing to do just to ensure that everyone makes it out alright. And luckily for us, the canon ending is the best ending that you can get in the game, so that means everyone lives. I do hope that something would not come down later down the line and try to ruin this very good ending. Gee, I hope that doesn't happen. Another thing I really like about Juiced is his design. And in this aspect, this is where many people start drawing the Alucard comparisons. And I don't know about you, but that is an insult to Juiced. For all we can understand, he probably saw a good look at Juiced and said, let me copy that. Because, you know, Harmony of Dissonance takes place first in the timeline, so get screwed. But I guess on a more serious note, I guess the reason why they look, similar to some, is mainly due to how they dress. For example, although their cloaks differ in color, they both are highly detailed, as you can clearly see in both illustrations of the characters. However, something I'd like to point out is that another thing people try to compare them to is their hair. As I say, both of them have platinum colored hair, which can be true at times for Alucard, but not all the time, as sometimes he is seen with very, desaturated, bright yellow hair. Meanwhile, Juiced is just white all around. Hell, Juiced is even more pale than Alucard is. How do you manage? In other news, Juiced is one of those characters that I want to see in other forms of media that aren't Nocturne. For example, I think he would have been a cool addition to Grimoire of Souls' cast, or at least in Castlevania Judgment or Harmony of Despair. But unfortunately, we never got him, for one reason or another, whether because Konami thought he was too irrelevant, or they just simply didn't have enough time to do so. Regardless of what the reason is, he's still not there. And frankly, if you ask me, that is a war crime of the highest proportions. Luckily though, I believe Vampire Survivors did him justice by adding him and adding a very good rendition of Successor of Fate, even though it took me a while to get used to. Now all I need in life is for V Rising to do a Juiced costume. Come on guys, if you can do Shanoa and Soma Cruz, I'm sure you guys can do a Juiced one. Please! Also, I don't know if it's very obvious for any of you, but I'm very down bad for Juiced. I won't even lie about this. If I were to claim I wasn't, I'd be burning in hell right now. Because my pants would be so fucking on fire that they'd be mistaken for the depths of hell themselves. But that's enough for everything. What are your top favorite Castlevania characters? I'm very interested to hear your guys' opinion on it. But I did promise that I had a special thing waiting for you at the end of the video, so allow me to announce what I plan to do. So, for those of you who have made it this far, I plan to do a Cherryful Q&A after this video. So the way this is going to work is that if you want me to read a question that you have laid out for me in the Q&A, all you have to do is put a parentheses Q&A, end of parentheses, in any part of the question or statement that you want me to read out during the Q&A. I have really been wanting to do a Q&A since about a year ago on this channel, and I think to celebrate the fact that we have reached another milestone within just 2 years, I wanted to give you guys the experience of asking me your most requested questions, or just, requested statements you wanted to say to me, as a way of celebrating this monumentous achievement. Of course, as of recording this, I don't know at what time to cut off the submissions, so I guess you guys will know under the pinned comment under this video, and if you see that the pinned comment reads that I am not receiving any more Q&A questions up to that point, and then I guess that just means you missed your opportunity. But I tend to be pretty lenient, so who knows when that could be. Anyway, my name is Cereza Valentine, and thank you for accompanying me whilst I talked about my favorite Castlevania characters in the series, and Juiced. Speaking of Juiced, where is he? Juiced? Juiced? Oh look, a note. Dear Cereza Valentine, we have hidden Juiced away for his own protection and safety. Good luck trying to find him, bitch. Oh, those.
Fuckers! So, you want to make this a hide-and-seek game, don't you? Don't worry, Belmonts. If it is Juice that I seek, then Juiced I will find.
Thank you for hiding me, my fellow Belmont. I don't know what I would do without you. And thanks for your friend as well. If it were not for you, I'd be in a serious hell right about now.
Don't worry, I've dealt with her before.
Don't you worry, Pops, cause it's your grandson Richter who's going to be protecting you from evil.